This is Danny Rose talking, but I feel like the whole reason that that's so hard for this world to do that is because of the social class that we have going on, and it would be so much easier if you had a world where everyone had the same amount of money, the same job, the same housing, living, income, all of that, and that's the difference, and that's what makes the difference in it making harder for somebody within the 1% to help or feel the same as somebody who is working class, middle class.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot, Danny, because it makes it like very hard to empathize with people who are so far above you or so far below you. Because, I mean, you can't, if you don't know the people, if you don't know the people who are affected by the social class differences, like take a 1%er, they don't know what it's like to live.
If you have the privilege to have the mindset like, oh, I worked for this, why should I have to help anyone else who's not working as hard as I am? When you're not really taking into account all the disadvantages that they might already have in their way, just being different than you, maybe like socio-economically, racially, wherever. It's really easy. It's definitely a privilege to be able to look down and be like, oh, well, they need to help themselves. I think that's something that is really hard for people to do, have empathy for someone that's not in their situation, especially when you feel like they don't deserve it because they may have not worked as hard as you, rather than acknowledging the fact that it's harder for them to work as hard as you.
Yeah, going off of what you said, when you have all these privileges, and I also think that humans are not innately selfish, but it's very easy for humans to become selfish. So when you're in this like great position of the 1%, why would someone like that give away their money to help other people when that can just stay in your family and help your future generations? Like, if I'm trying to put myself in their mindset, like I feel like it would be hard for me to like what you said, truly empathize with the lower class when like, why should I give away my wealth to help people I don't even know and I don't even care about?
You know, and it makes me think about how it is that we're going to react to this if it ended up happening where we all had to live the same and we had the same income and everything I just explained. And it makes me think about how would people react? Would you have to start with a new generation of people that have never lived in the 1% lifestyle, or do you start with the people who already have, and would they be greedy enough to be like, no, this is all for me, or would everyone help out as one? Does that make sense?
I think it has to start with a new generation. I feel like
that's
I feel like the generation right now, we're all, even us, I feel like we're already too late to fully like change our society. But let's say the next generation, the people who are born today, like if they're taught from the very beginning that you need to share the wealth, you need to share so that everyone can live a successful life. I feel like if you start at that age, they'll be born with this mindset and it'll be a lot more functioning society.
Well then, do you guys think the solution is everybody being the same or everybody treating each other equally? Because realistically, what is the dream that Martin Luther King was trying to achieve? Everyone being the same or everyone being treated the same?
Everyone being treated the same, but realistically, is that ever going to happen? It's
more realistic than everyone being the same, don't you think?
I mean, not really technically, because this society can crash. Money can not be valuable.
But as humans, we all have so many differences in so many different ways. It's almost impossible to kind of like have a base level for how we should all be.
No, but it's not like you decide that that's going to happen. It just ends up happening, and then that's your life. Like it's not like anyone wants that to happen, but the government can crash. The world can crash. Like this nation can become one.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about differences, just being born a different person than the person next to you, whether it's gender, race, where you live, how much money you have, what your parents look like, where you came from originally, things like that. I'm talking about like being the same, as in trying to be the same when you have so many differences that affect how you navigate the world that you live in.
Sure.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with the idea of everybody being the same is that you lose your identity in it, and that's like a big thing that we have today, where we have identity. And if we are all the same, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but you're arguing that for us to treat each other better, like we talked about with the empathizing with people in a different situation than you, for us to treat each other better, it would be easier if we were all in the same boat.
Technically, I mean, yeah, but I don't think that it would, like, we should have that, because I feel like, I mean, coming from my brain, I could say, like, oh, I could be the 1% and I could still give back and understand what they've gone through, but that's only because I've not lived in the 1% mind, so I don't know how I would think if I was in the 1%, but I'm just saying, if it were to happen and it was forced upon us, then that would be the only way that we could come together and be equal. But I don't think that we should all be the same and it should crash. I'm just saying that I feel like nothing will happen until that does happen.
I agree with you. No, you're explaining a lot more. I feel like the 1% will never truly understand this until they're in the exact same boat as us. But like, it's just unrealistic to just assume that we can make the richer people become just as poor as us.
And it's not. It's unrealistic when you want it to happen, but my point being is that if it were to happen and our system was to crash, that is what would happen. and it would suck.
It would be like a reset button.
Totally.
So are you guys saying that money would make, if we both only had $1, that would make her nicer towards me?
I think not.
Because I could still look down on you without having $1.
Nicer, but you'd be on the same mindset. Because if
why?
someone,
but I still don't think that's true
Why?
at all. I don't think.
But why would you be on the same mindset?
Because okay, let's say I'm born with $100 and Danny is born with $1. I'm going to have a completely different mindset than her. But if we're both born with $1, we're gonna start on the same route. And like, okay, differences can occur, but it's the principle that we're starting at the same point.
But I think you're also simplifying the situation to we only have differences because of our financial status,
and that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, regardless of if you and Danny both have $1, she's still a female. You're both of different races.
So are you saying because of the way that you're raised, even that it could be different?
Right.
Yes, absolutely,
totally, and I completely agree with that. But I think that our environment has a lot to do with the way that we are raised, and being raised a certain way is passed down by generation, and that generation probably has lived the same way, meaning that like rich is passed down, you know, it's inherited, like money is inherited. So that's my point, is that your environment does affect the way that you were raised and the way that you grow and understand things in your mindset, and that does make sense. You become a different person, but it both make sense to me personally.
Yeah,
but did you know that most people that grew up as the 1%, and if you listen to older people talk, they'll tell you we didn't have anything and we were happy. We didn't have anything and we didn't even know we were poor.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think money makes you who you are.
I think there's a misunderstanding.
Or make you think different.
That we're only talking about financial, but like I'm saying, if we're all born saying that like, okay, men or female are treated the exact same, I'm saying like if everything was reset and like everybody was equal and everybody would start off with the same opportunity, then people would be able to understand each other better. And it doesn't matter if you're nice to people, but it's the matter of like understanding where people are going from and just trying to be on the same page of like helping everybody.
But you have to be nice in order to help people, don't you?
And there's no reason to help people if everybody's exactly the same.
Yeah, who do you need to help?
And you would have to be nice to do that. You would have to
if you don't help other people, then eventually the disparity between the people are going to change again.
But you're also thinking of two different helps. You're probably thinking of helping by giving somebody money, but we're thinking of helping as in helping somebody pick something up and take or helping an old person walk across the street. Like what's the
Well, I'm talking about both. Okay. I'm talking about both.
But both are so
different. Be it helping. I mean, not really. If you're saying reset to what? Reset to where you're kind. But equal doesn't equal kind. It doesn't mean that my personality is going to change to where now all of a sudden I'm kind because me and you're equal. I could still be. I could still be just as evil and be equal with you. And
maybe, but you don't have any more power than I do because you are in the same living situation as me. How much you can't do anything different than I do because you can have a different mindset and you can want to think different or say something different, but you can't go and destroy somebody's life because you have more money because we have the same amount of money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but like I said, if you talk to some of the elders in the African American community, they weren't destroyed. Their lives weren't being destroyed because they didn't have money.
No, I
they were
that.
living rich. As a matter of fact, before the civil rights movement, African Americans were happier. We had our own schools, we had our own banks, we had our own bankers, we had our own stores, we had our own everything. It wasn't until they took the signs down and said, okay, you guys can come with us, that we started becoming watered down. So we were happy.
Yeah.
We were good. As a matter of fact, it was, I believe, in Oklahoma where they used to call it Black Wall Street. They were so rich that a group of white men bombed the section that all these wealthy black people lived in. They were too happy. So that didn't have anything to do. Well, why not just leave them alone?
I feel like okay. I'm trying to sound very like not. I'm trying to be careful with my words, but I feel like that's still a segregation. Like if you're only with your community, I feel like sense of community is very important, but you're not integrated with other people if you're only staying with your kind of people. And I feel like the dream at the end of the day is to integrate everybody and not remain in these isolated
That was his dream. But what I'm talking about is what made what we consider happiness or equal. We didn't care. We were happy with who we were. Just like right now, you might only hang out with these two at school. You haven't integrated with everybody else in the school. You're happy and nobody's tripping off of that. You hook up with the people at your school when it's time. When it's time for us to hook up, we will. And besides that, we didn't initiate integration. We didn't initiate segregation.
But what's to say that other people aren't happy? Or that they're like upset with their position? Because I could be happy, but if someone else isn't happy, then not everybody is fully on the same playing field, to say.
Right, but even when there is the same playing field, like I said, with Black Wall Street, they were just as wealthy as anybody else. Somebody came and destroyed that for them. It was the same playing field. They were wealthy black people, and they got it all taken away from them. They bombed the whole town.
But
bombed the whole town.
I feel like that's also just an isolated region, like Black Wall Street.
No,
like,
it wasn't isolated. I can go over many stories for you. No, it wasn't.
But like, at the end of the day, the white people were still always above the minorities, and the minorities, okay, they could.
Were they above, or did they just take away from them?
No, I definitely think they were above.
Oh. No, I don't think they were above. They took away from Black Wall Street. The people on Black Wall Street.
Oh, so I'm also talking about from my Asian experiences. So, like, for example, my grandma, when World War II was happening, she was extremely discriminated against. She was put in a not a concentration camp, but those camps that all the Japanese
internment.
Yeah, all the Japanese people were forced into there. So, okay, there could be rich Asians, but my grandma wasn't a part of that. So, like.
So you think if she was rich, she wouldn't have been a part of it? I think they encamped everybody. They encamped my parents' next door neighbor.
No, but I'm saying, like,
and we grew up in the Crocker Highlands area.
But
I'm saying if there's like
a wealthy area, and they had to leave their house.
I feel like I may be misunderstanding what you're saying, but you're saying like because there's like okay, there's a certain group of Black or a certain group of Asian people that are doing wealthy and are doing happy even like without thinking about the white people, but there's still a whole amount of minority people who are not experiencing that. And that's not integration. Not everybody's on the same playing field, even if some people are.
But what I'm saying is this group of people was on the same playing field, and they got that field taken away from them. So what does playing field even mean? I think the happiness comes from your mindset. Yeah. We're happy, we're poor. We're still happy. We didn't even know we were poor. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. It's all a mindset. And you can't reset somebody's mind unless you program us to be robots. And we're not ever going to all be robots.
Like
are we? Huh?
It sounds like ignorance to me, though.
What's ignorance?
Like, I feel like, because, okay, let's say you were poor and happy. Like, that's a good thing, but imagine how you would be if you were happy, but you could also afford everything that you couldn't really afford in the beginning. Like, you could be happy with the food that you're eating and the school you're going to, but imagine your quality of life if you could have everything else.
But see, that's what you say. That's what you, that's what you say. How do you know what's good for me? Why should I desire what you say is good?
I know, but
that's the robot.
Okay, let's say.
I think happiness has a lot to do with the person, though, because like
it does.
You're saying, but I still don't feel like the point of it is to make everybody happy. I feel like the point of it is to make everybody equal, and so that there isn't argument, so that there isn't discrimination, so that there isn't disagreement. So it's like, okay, but when you talk about how you can be poor and be happy, like, that person's reason is probably because they still have their family around and that they are taking care of their family and they don't mind because they'd rather be with their family than be alone even if they were rich and didn't have them. You know what I mean? So they'd rather be poor if they know that they're going to be with their family. So that's one person's happiness. But then growing up, then they know that when they get older and they have a job and they know what the difference is, and then they know what they were missing when they were younger. Because what you were explaining was when they're younger and they're poor. They don't know
I didn't say younger. I said the elders.
Just in general. Okay, just in general. They probably don't know what they're missing, or they don't care, you know?
Yeah, they don't care. So therefore it's a mindset, right? Totally. So you can't program the people's minds.
But I don't feel like it's programming. I feel like it's just
or reset. You guys said reset.
Not reset people. Reset society in the way that...
But society is people, ain't it?
Made by people.
It's
okay,
but I'm talking about social classes. I'm talking about the fact that there is a 1%.
The people make the social classes. They are the ones that determine the social classes.
This is a really interesting way that we're going, because I don't know if we mean to or not, but this is very reminiscent of Plato's allegory of the cave. And Frederick Douglass...
That's literally what we're talking about right now.
It's Frederick Douglass also wrote... how about in Learning to Read and Write, about how once he felt that he wasn't getting enough in his life, and so he learned to read and write, and then he realized what the white people were doing to black people, and he saw that because he had educated himself, and I don't think
and that's when he said that, sorry for cutting off, but he said that he was happier before he learned to read and write because he didn't realize how much he was missing out on. Exactly. And later on, when he kind of did liberate himself through writing, he said that he felt bad for every other single black person that had not experienced what he said he felt happy that they didn't have to experience what he did because their ignorance was their bliss. And so although a lot of people obviously see education as a great thing, for him it was liberating in the sense that he could access education that made him aware of his surroundings, but being aware of his surroundings was not what made him happy. So at the end of the day,
he was aware
it's like, yes, because he was aware that he was aware that
what was happening.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of the red pill and blue pill in The Matrix, and it's like, do you want to live happily in bliss, or do you want to like live in reality? And for me personally, maybe I'm saying because I haven't truly experienced it, but I would rather live in reality. I want to live in a real world. I don't want to live in ignorance where I'm completely unaware of the rest of the world. Like, I don't want to live in that kind of
I wouldn't. I would rather live in ignorance and
I think that-
bliss.
okay,
But would
that's
you
the
know
difference.
the difference if you were
Exactly,
so...
you wouldn't
That's
if
the
you
whole
were.
point.
That's
Know
the
the
whole
difference.
point.
So,
You're
yeah,
living in bliss.
For
Like, that's
people
amazing.
listening who might not know what the allegory of the cave was, Plato wrote a story about these people who were stuck in a cave and they could only see a wall their entire lives. And so there were people behind this curtain behind them who had shadow puppets who were putting stuff up on the wall. So they lived their entire lives believing that this was what the world was. And that was
the only world.
And that was all that the world was, were these shadow puppets on the wall. And so then one day, one of the members of the cave, or a few of them, broke out of the cave and went up and saw the world above. And then the point is that once you see outside of the cave, it's impossible for you to go back into it. Like Frederick Douglass saying that he wished that he didn't know what he knew. It's impossible to get back into the cave. You can't unsee what you've seen. And so it's really interesting that our conversation would just go to this topic
So then
naturally.
wouldn't that go along with the people who don't know what they're missing out when they're poor and they're happy still? Don't you think that if they were in
yes,
that
the
same
mindset.
They're the
position
people
that
in the
they would
cave.
want- yeah, they're the people in the cave, and that they would want equality if they knew what they were missing out
Well,
on?
but they don't know that they don't know that they're experiencing any type of inequality because they haven't lived in a world where they're visibly, like, they can visibly and, like, tangibly see inequality happen.
Right.
It's like there's no really inequality to them because although they may still be unequal to the people in the next neighborhood over,
They don't
it's like
know.
they don't see that.
But we know. So, like, doesn't that make it, like,
do
messed
we
up
know?
to be looking at them and being like, so we're
But what are
talking
you gonna
about...
do? Tell them and be like, oh, by the way, you're inferior.
No, but it's like, I mean, like, obviously that's not a conversation you have. That's not how you fix things in the real world. But
Exactly,
Like, but
so-
you see what I'm saying? That doesn't that sound like not right? If we're talking about them in a way where we're looking at them in a telescope and we're like, we know, but they don't. Does that make
But
sense?
that's
What
like
I'm
the
saying?
whole bystander
We're all
thing.
in
like-
caves too, is the other thing. We may see other things, but here we are in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I'm sure someone's
it's a very
looking at us.
liberal bubble, and we don't really know. I mean, Eric,
But
you
what
went
don't
to
we know?
well, Eric went to Germany for a year, so he actually did leave the cave for a little while. You came back, but you know, I have only lived in California. I lived in Southern California, which is more conservative than Northern California for a little while, but I was too young to remember anything from it. So I've only lived in this liberal bubble my entire life, and I'm about to go to college in Orange County, which is known for being a very conservative area. So I'm about to leave the bubble. I'm about to leave the cave and see what's outside of it. We're all
technically
in
you
our
still
own
know.
caves.
But technically you still know. Like, obviously you haven't lived it to be like, I've lived there. I've been in on, like, you know, like, I've been there. Like,
But know what? What do we know?
that it's a
Can I
conservative.
ask?
That it's
It sounds
conservative.
like-
But I'm saying
Let's
no.
go with this. Like, it's conservative.
But
So
that's still not what we
But
know.
it-
You're saying
wait.
technically we know, even though we haven't experienced it. Well, what do we know? Because
But it sounds like
we
you
haven't
guys-
it's
experienced
conservative.
It sounds like you're.
that's all that you need to know.
What do
I
you
mean,
mean that
not
it's
that's all that you need to
conservative?
know, but that I'm
Do you
going
mean
off
that the
what you
rest
said.
of the world is conservative?
No,
Do you
him,
ever leave the cave is the
going
real
to
question.
Orange County,
Because
being like, this, I'm leaving my cave,
There's
going to a place
thousands
that's
of caves.
There's
conservative,
thousands of caves.
and I'm about to live that life and understand what it's like. Like, sure, we're about to live that, but he
that's
already knew from the start that it was conservative.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Okay, but that's what I was
we
saying.
said the liberal bubble. You look at, like, you know, we said, oh, we don't know what we. I mean, like, we're in this bubble. We don't know. And then you're like, oh, but you do know, even though you haven't lived there. It's like, no, because we don't know what other people are saying outside of this bubble about how maybe dumb and clueless we are in our little liberal, idealistic, like, stupid foo-foo fairy tale ways. It's like you don't know.
Okay, I'm
I don't-
slightly confused about what's happening, but I just gotta say something. So it sounds like, this is kind of like my interpretation of what you guys are saying, that inequality is okay as long as you're unaware of it. Is
No,
No.
that's not what we said
No,
at
because-
all.
I
no, because
understand where
going
you're
back-
coming from, but
Like,
I don't
you
think
understand
that's
how
what
I
you're
got that,
explaining.
but like,
No, I
because you
do
guys are
see
saying
where you
that,
got
like,
that, though,
if you're
because he's
poor, if you're poor and happy, okay, you're happy, but you're still experiencing inequality. So does that like justify you being, like?
But if
See, I'm not arguing that being in the cave is a good thing. I'm just making a correlation.
That's how I'm interpreting what like the other side of the argument is. So like, I could be wrong, but that's how I'm.
yeah,
seeing
no,
it.
I see what you're saying. But what I think I was getting at was like, it's more about how the victim of whatever inequality or whatever whatever kind of social thing we want to call it, like, it's like how they take it. It's whether they choose to make themselves a victim or accept their circumstances and then rather choose to be, like, it's rather whether they see themselves as a victim or see the circumstances that they have and choose not to let anything else that's outside of it affect how their happiness and how they live through the world.
That to me, that sounds like just accept your place.
No, it's not accepting your place.
Well,
It's
'cause
about
what you're
choosing.
saying if, like-
but it's about choosing whether or not to let everything make you not happy. It's about choosing how, situationally, seeing what in the world, like, it's okay. It's about seeing if you're in a situation and like something really bad happens to you. It's not about accepting this really bad thing that happened to you, but it's about seeing what you can do to make sure that you rise above it, regardless. And whether that's through your happiness or through like working hard or something like that, it's just about not letting.
I think a big difference is. I think a big difference is that the cave has become a glass ceiling. It's impossible for people to get out of it. I personally feel that you should try and get out of your comfort zone and try and in this cave analogy is try and get out of the cave if you can. But what's happening in a lot of places now is that people may be happy where they are, but it doesn't matter because there's a glass ceiling now at the entrance of the cave. Even if they wanted to get out, people are holding them back and keeping them down.
Where would you go if you left the cave?
Well, like I said earlier, there's a million different caves. A cave for Eric could be he's spent his whole life drinking Coke and he's never drank Pepsi before, and one day he drinks Pepsi and he thinks it's better.
I have a quick question because I've been thinking a lot about the two of you and how you said that people make society or social class. So does that mean by like let's like cancel out race and everybody be one color? So like does social groups or in social social groups and like money and like 1% and not 1% working class, middle class, does that mean that you're there because of the way, like, how you got yourself there? Because, you know, like, any of us could all work to 1%, if that makes sense. Or you can be, do you see what I'm saying, what my question is?
Yeah, but, like,
I mean,
is that what you're explaining? I'm just asking if that's where you're coming from. If you're saying, like, the 1% makes, the people make social groups and classes by us. Like, we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a place that's not... We're talking about America right now,
yeah.
Because, you know, we all live in America. But take a place that's, like, historically one race. There are still social classes in that race.
There's always going to be that.
Russia is mainly white people. But there's still, like, the Kremlin. There's still Putin. There's still all of the people underneath him. And there's like a 1% or whatever it is over there, metric system. No. It's a joke, guys. There's all these different... social classes in Russia, even though its majority is one race. And so, yes, social class isn't 100% based on race. Here in America, it seems to be moving in that direction. But, yeah, social class is based on a lot of things.
It's been in that direction.
It's been in that direction. But, you're right. It's been that. But social class is something that's definitely built by the people, but it's generally built by the founders. And like you said, where it's like, how much you've worked to get there. In a lot of places, you can't work to get there.
Right.
We do live in a capitalist society, as faulty as it may be, where we do have the opportunity to work and to make better versions, or like to get to higher ground. But a lot of places don't. So like think of serfdom in lots of Slavic countries a long time ago. If you were born from a serf, which is basically just a form of like an indentured servant or slave, you would live as that forever. You would take your parents' burdens on you. Yeah. There was no possible way that you could get out of that area.
Right.
What we like to think, at least, here in our capitalist America, is that anybody can pull themselves up from their bootstraps. And that's true in most cases, is that lots of people who came from nothing, came from very poor families or came from like first-generationers, a lot of first-generationers, pull themselves up from their bootstraps. They have no history here, and they make something great out of themselves.
Right.
And so that's what we're lucky to have. However, there's a lot of different things. Instead of it being an open plain... Yeah, exactly.
In theory that's how the American dream. That's how it should play out.
Exactly. However, there's a lot of different things, and race is one of those very big things, where me as a white person... It makes it a lot easier for me to pull myself up from my bootstraps than somebody who could be in my exact same financial position, exact same like intelligence level as me, exact same grades, who just happens to be a different race.
I appreciate you for seeing that.
I mean, it's true. Yeah.
So, I kind of want to bring it back to the MLK dream. My next question for you guys is, how did Dr. King's stance on civil rights affect you?
I'm going to just say, like, personally, from starting with my grandma, because that's the era. Personally, I remember she told me stories of she was witnessing just a lot of, she was in certain protester riots, but anyway, she came from Pennsylvania, then moved to LA, and then from my father from LA to San Diego, and then I'm here in Oakland. So that's just, I see basically in my everyday life how I'm able to go to an integrated school, able to go and like I just see the world as like, from my time standpoint, a lot of times when I'm in really hardships, I'll think of my past ancestors and people in different generations in line of my family, what they had to go through, and I just like see the difference, and I'm like very thankful, because I know that because of what had happened within the past, that in my future I can become a great person and help out other people. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, that was nice.
I think that even if Martin, we're on a first name basis. Even if Dr. King's, maybe what he was saying, he teaches specifically didn't apply to the race that you fall in, I'd say that, like, all of us here at least have a heritage or ethnicity of background that does have some type of oppressed minority in any case. So in any way, even if you don't identify with Dr. King racially, you can just see it prevalent everywhere in his civil rights activism, because it's not, civil rights activism was for the civil rights of everybody that had been oppressed, everyone that had been shut down. So I think that you can see it almost in every way today. Just even being like that there are mixed race people, you know, that even just like there are such small things like that, like you said, living in an integrated school.
Relationships, friendships.
Yeah,
everything.
just everything. Like, it's just really prevalent to how we live today. And although he wasn't, like, you know, the person that ended segregation, it's still, like, he was just such the martyr for just the image, the icon of what we see just so, like, casually in our lives today.
Totally.
I think it's really, like, amazing to think about it, that it really just started, like, you just needed that type of, like, messiah type person.
No, but it's amazing that, that everybody's able to see that, too. Like, any race.
I think, yeah, especially...
Agree on that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're
but,
fine.
I think that's very... I feel like his message is more prevalent in liberal areas such as the Bay Area, where we're so diverse and so integrated. And I think the next step into continuing his dream was to spread it to the rest of America and to, like, the southern areas and places where there's not much diversity, where minorities are still very much segregated, and there's, like, that separation between the two, like, kinds of people. I think that's
I
the
really
next
didn't
step.
know that growing up. Like, I don't want to even sound ignorant, because I know that now, but, like, growing up, I really didn't know that it was like that in other parts of, you know, the country. Like, I really didn't. And, and it's sad that I don't, because, I mean, that I didn't.
You were young.
Because, I was young, you know, but, like, I do now. It's just crazy to me that it's still a thing, and it was, like, you know.
Actually, to build off of that, so I'm mixed, and my whole family is really mixed, and for up until pretty recently, actually, like up into my teenage years, I thought that most people were mixed. Like, I didn't realize that majority of people are just one race. Like,
I thought that
never
too.
occurred to me.
That never occurred to me either until I was,
maybe
like 12.
It was a real eye-opener.
It was like a shock. I was like,
yeah.
I met someone that was like literally just like
one
full,
race,
like Irish or like French or something. And I was like, both your parents are just full French, and they're like,
I actually agree with that.
I'm like,
yeah, totally.
That's crazy. Like that you don't even
sounds
have.
weird to us.
I'm sure if they go on Ancestry.com, they're like 1% South African or something like that.
But are
it's
they?
Like, no, but like
they
kind of everyone.
I'm
It's
probably...
like everyone takes a DNA test. And they're like, oh, I'm 1% African.
Does that really happen on everyone's?
No,
not
no.
everybody's.
No,
You're
but,
just being
to
to
go off
guys,
of what
I'm really,
you
what's
said
it called?
of not knowing.
What?
I remember this elementary school I tried to
No.
go to, when it came to like MLK Day and everything, they tried to teach that racism had ended with segregation and everything. I remember those days, just a little pitch. But, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just take a look around this room right now. 100 years ago, this would be unheard of.
Oh, true.
Totally.
Oh,
Like,
true.
that's, if you know.
That's why I was saying.
Not
that,
even
like,
100
coming
years
from any race,
ago.
It's like
Yeah.
amazing to
Yeah.
be like
60.
we could all agree on that. That
This
it's
is-
been mixed
yeah.
and that we all are doing something that's like different compared to them.
This right here
That's
is,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's,
Look at us. Future.
So his stance on civil rights affected all of us.
it did. It
Amen.
affected
In
everybody.
conclusion.
In conclusion, thank
Yeah.
you, Martin. Doctor.
So we kind of just touched on this, but this is a more like direct question: is what did Dr. King mean to you guys?
Well, so the elementary school that I went to was predominantly black, and they were very much focused on celebrating black history and really empowering the black community. And they often talked about Dr. King, and so I feel like for me, he helped me understand a different minority's perspective on life, because me being Asian and white, like, I have a completely different perspective than someone who grew up in a black community, in a black family. And I feel like that was very important for me to, like, understand a different minority's mindset.
Yeah, empathy. It's creating empathy.
Yeah.
Would say personally a hero to look up to / aspire to be, for person wise, just for me to love myself and then people within my community and then people outside the community, and you know, even people that may discriminate against me, to still be kind to them, because that's how they're gonna look at me, and I'm only. And then also aspire/year to be is within my industry and business to, after I gain a certain momentum and point, to use my audience following to then, persuade and help other people. That just explains itself. But yeah, it's my personal.
Well, my entire life, majority of my life, because I went to a school for 8 years of my life, which was all I really knew growing up. They talked about Dr. Martin Luther King all the time, and we always talked about how our school, because my school was very diverse in a sense where everybody was accepted. It was an Episcopal school, and we had a church, and we had a chapel that we had every Friday, and it was very, in that way, diverse. But I realized once I left that it wasn't as diverse as I thought it was, and people were actually a lot about money there, and I didn't really know that until I got a lot older. But it did mean a lot to me knowing that he came up out of his out of everything, like just being so open about what he wanted to talk about and being so brave about it. And it was just, I don't know, it was great to know, but I don't feel like I learned as much as I could have being at the school that I went to at the time, just because it wasn't as diverse as I thought it was. And but yeah, he's definitely an amazing person and very, very brave for the things that he's done, and he's obviously made a large impact on all of us to this day. So
the middle school that I went to was like almost fully white.
Yeah.
And same with,
me
so,
too. My elementary school.
Yeah,
I was the
basically
blackest
me too.
person there.
Really?
Mine too.
There was only 2 Mexicans in my class for 8 years, and I was the only
I mean,
other.
OSA has a pretty slim Latino population.
It does. It
and
actually
Asian.
does. It has a very
And
slim.
Asian, yeah.
It does. I agree. Is it hot in here? Is that just me?
Yeah,
It's
it's
really
really
hot.
hot in here.
I've been like dying.
So hot. That's why I put my hair up so
yeah,
long
I've
ago.
been like.
Okay,
Sorry,
so,
Ben. What were you
But
saying?
yeah, so I went to, and it wasn't just my middle school, so I go to Albany. I lived in Albany.
Ooh,
And,
ooh.
So I
Up
spent my elementary school years and my middle school years with the exact same people.
I feel it.
Because there was 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and there's 1 high school in Albany.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I'm really glad that I left that environment and came to a school like this and like got to be with people who weren't
Right?
all white.
Doesn't it?
Well,
It's so
listen,
different.
Thank
Because
you.
I'm getting to the good stuff.
You're welcome.
I left, and it's not good. I left Albany High School, and last year, a bunch of the people that I have known since it was such a small place have known since I was.
Stop talking to you. Do they
Well,
stop talking to you?
Oh no, it's way
no,
worse.
it's way worse. Just
way
let him
worse.
say it. I know the story. Just
Yeah.
let him say it.
It was pretty big. I had been going to school with them since kindergarten. Some of these kids were involved with a scandal on Instagram where they would post racist photos of the black students around Albany High School. And so it's stuff like that where it's and the press had a field day, of course. It's like liberal, progressive, incredibly white town, and it's stuff like that where I'm so happy that I left
Yeah.
and got to see what it's like outside of that cave. And I mean, it's stuff like where I was Jewish,